was just trying to make sure YouTube was going, and it looks like it is. How do I make sure the audio is working? Testing, come on, give me some audio. Oh, it's not live? Well, make sure the audio is working. Okay, alright, it's working. Alright, so we're up and going now. And let's see here. So, this is a continuation from yesterday when I showed off this Tell AI app version 2 that I'm working on. We made first two chapters of the novel that we're testing with. So I'm going to go ahead and start up the app and we'll continue on. So this is the interactive story mode that Tell AI version 1 has. And of course version 2 has that also, and this novel builder is this the new part that I've been adding in. So it's an AI assisted novel builder. It has all kinds of places where it allows you to ask AI to do this and that for you, and it provides all the prompts and stuff for you, unless you want to put in something custom. You can set up your AI plugins right here, and yes, it's plural, as in not just the chat plugin. This is the plugin that will, talk to AI to get text written for the story or for descriptions of images and songs and stuff like that. The image one obviously generates images for the story. The TTS one generates text to speech for the story. Now, I'll be using a much crappier quick TTS as part of it's built in so that you could quickly have a TTS read the story to you as part of your review process. It's not the actual high quality TTS that's this. This right here is the AI TTS, not the built-in browser TTS. And so when you're done with the story, you could say, okay, go through all my pages and generate the images, the TTS, and the background music, which is what this here does. So if you have these different AIs running on your machine or some machine somewhere that you can point to with a URL, like that, they all have URLs like that. So if you have some place where you could run these services on a machine, you could run them also, even if it's a paid service somewhere, a server that could run these AIs. I run them locally on a couple different machines that have 4090s in them, NVIDIA 4090s. And then this is the library of persona voices or voice actors that comes in later. The story settings for all kinds of things, how it generates the pages, what writing style it uses, rules that you want it to use additional for writing style, image styles that you want it to use, what the narrator's voice sounds like. Okay, then you start off by giving it a premise. You can expand that premise and have it generate an outline. And then from there, you say, okay, break that outline down create a breakdown of it. All chapters, all pages in each chapter. And each page has like a summary of what that page is about, characters involved. You can assign personas to the characters that the breakdown comes up with. You can see the text version of the breakdown here. So all these characters are part of the breakdown as well throughout the story. And so then you can either manually assign personas to each one, or you can come up here and do that assisted AI thing where you say, okay, I want you to look at the character's role in this story and then assign a persona or a voice actor to them. And then there's an interface here for generating one page, many pages, pages at specific ranges, that sort of thing. and then you can see all the pages generated, and you can search through them here. And then your reader obviously allows you to read the story, but also allows you to edit the story. It has controls for moving around in the story, kicking off the quick TTS, uh, enabling inline editing, so you can just start typing into here. You can also highlight things and tell the AI to provide alternatives to whatever you highlighted. Uh, it shows you metadata that the AI came up with, summarizing what this page is about. You can create the high level, the high quality TTS and images for, right here for an individual page. And you can generate editor review, which for this one page, which it'll take this and it'll highlight parts of it it thinks it could change and give alternative that you could accept to change it to. Or you could do like I did, and yesterday started testing out this feature here where you say automatically run the editor for every new page and accept everything the editor said. And that has actually increased the quality quite a bit, so I don't have to hardly make any changes, at least over the past chapter yesterday. It did a really good job. So that's pretty much it. This is a novel or an AI assisted novel builder. By taking the different parts and pieces that go into making a story and giving each one of them some kind of AI assisted alternative besides just manually entering it. Okay, so we finished off with this page yesterday. It happens to be the end of chapter 2. If we come up here and look at chapter 3, it should start off at 53, and it does. Okay, so we'll come up here to pages and say generate 53 to 63. Let's do 10 pages. And you can see right here, I don't have a good animation in yet or anything showing that it's generating. It just puts this label here, but it's currently busy. This label will go away when it's done. So for now, I was going to see how many pages are in chapter 3 while it's working on that. So 50. What did I say? 53 to 63. That label goes away if you switch tabs. All right, well, like I said, it's a visual thing. I'll fix that later. Probably 53 to 63 is what I said, but the chapter goes up to 79. Okay. So that is a bug. Let's go ask Cursor to look into that. All right, so it's pages. All right, so I set it to ask mode because I don't want it to change anything yet. I just want it to look through the code and see if it can find what I'm talking about. Because what happened was that label should have stayed there until, even though I switched tabs and came back. The pattern I've gotten into so far over the past few years of developing this way using AI is, and I like using Cursor a lot because it has all the other models in it. Even though I have it set to Composer too fast here for some reason. I'll just go ahead and set it to auto mode. Let it pick whatever model it wants to use. But um, I tend to first say ask mode to get it to go find the part of the code and describe it that I want changed, and that's sort of like putting in a prompt for me because I just have it go find the information and put it in here. I used to go do that for it because it wasn't capable of doing that in the past. AI's been getting better, obviously, and then once it's able to describe it adequately to me, then I put it into plan mode, still not making changes, and say, okay, put together a plan of this so I can quickly look over and see if it looks like it's talking about what I want it to do. Yeah, it sounds like it's right. And here, let me check my Git because it's another part of it. Even if it's not right, I can always roll back if my changes have been saved, which these from earlier have not. Let's see here. I don't know. Okay, so now my previous changes are backed up to GitHub, and so even if this doesn't do exactly what I thought it was going to and it breaks, I can just roll back. And so now it's reading its own plan to put together here, and it's going through and building the solution I came up with. And so then, of course, it's back there generating the pages for the story while we're doing this. Even though it's not, that label gets lost when you switch tabs, it is still doing the work. It'll be done by the time this gets done. Just about done. Here we go. Okay, so let's jump over and shut the app down, copy it, make sure that any changes it made to the web content gets updated. The original that it edits is down here, and then in the bin debug folder, when I'm running the app in debug mode, the exe's location is over here in this path. Any Visual Studio developer knows this. Okay, so there it is. Let's go ahead and start it up and I don't know, we'll test it even though we already generated this pages. I'll generate a few more just to make sure it works. Like I did 53 to 63, I think. Um, yeah, 63. Okay, so let's do like 64 to 60. Well, 64 to 73. Well, no, let's make it go faster. 64 to 65. That's good enough. And then generate. So export. There it is. So if I switch tabs and switch back, it's still there. All right. So it's still working. All right. Before we get started with going through the story, though, I need to take a little bit of a break. But instead of just walking away, what I want to do is find my music making AI. I think right here. It's been a few weeks since I've been in here. Oh, hold it. Let's come up here and go to there and run the server, the AI server. Okay. Takes a little bit to start up because it's loading up all these giant model files into the GPU. Um, yeah, okay. Had to make sure I didn't have another AI model running. I could only run one at a time with a 4090 GPU. Okay, so oh no, it's still starting up. Still starting up. I think at this part it's waiting on some kind of timeout on something before it continues on. Let's go check the graph for the GPU. Yeah, you can see the GPU memory getting all loaded up here. That's probably what it's waiting. Yep, there it is. It's done now. Okay, so you can see I took like a minute or whatever to load up one of these AI models, which is why I don't just load them up. Load up one automatically, render a TTS, and then shut that down, load up another one, and render an image, and then it just takes too long to start them up. You really need to have like multiple machines, multiple GPUs. You can have multiple AIs running at once if you want to do what I'm doing. But if you're doing something like this, Sing Me a Song AI, if you're just wanting a single AI to run at once, stop debugging. You're debugging. Just use stop debugging. Oh, release. I need to have it in debug mode. So if you're just wanting to run one AI app that runs locally, I've got two running here. I got the story app running also, which is an AI app. But this one, because since I'm not using the real TTS or the real image generator or the real music background generator right now, I'm just writing the storage, the text. It's sending it off to these remote AI services. It's not local for this one right now, but this one here is local. This is an app I made. It makes music, and so I'm going to have it make some music here real quick, hopefully, and then take my quick break. Okay, so I don't know. Let's just have it generate something super quick here on its own, without me even doing any lyrics or anything. Let's go like that. Create now. You can see it shows the GPU usage over there, which is like this. So you can see it going up to be used, just like it shows it back here going up to be used. And it's done. I already don't like that one. Um, though maybe if I let it go longer, it'd sound different. No, it sounds like the same stuff. So let's go to like acoustic guitar, strings. I don't know, drums, bass, synth pads, whatever. Just see if we give it some kind of extra hints about like an actual orchestra type thing. Of course, I could have just regenerated and it would have came up with something different. But and I don't know, energetic. This is not a tutorial for this music app. I have a different video for that, and you can go much deeper into this and do all kinds of. See, it's got AI assisted stuff as well. I'm just using the super easy mode just to try to get this done quick. Oh, that's probably what I wanted to do was change the duration for something else like that. It's a little too late for that now, but we'll see what it comes up with here. Since it's busy cranking, obviously, already. A lot of people, there's a service out there called Suno, probably others, but it's a website that does this. This is basically like Suno, except it all runs on your PC if you have like a GPU powerful enough to run it. Okay, so let's run this. I'll take my quick break, and I'll be right back.
Come with me, we'll take this ride. Hands on wheels, hearts on fire. We're rebels on a wire. Live fast, love hard, feel alive. Burn bright in the midnight dive. Life's a storm with a gale, riding high, never City lights, a blur of dreams. Electric pulses
All right, I'm back. So that was pretty neat, wasn't it? You sat there and could watch me make a song with a dude singing in a matter of seconds. I think. I don't think it even took a minute to do that. That's AI, and this app is available on StreamTeam.com. I'm making these apps for myself, but I'm making them available to the whole internet. But nobody ever sees my streams because YouTube doesn't put them in front of people for some reason or something, so nobody even knows I have these apps available for everyone. You don't have to be some crazy developer AI specialist to do this. You don't have to learn how to wire all that stuff up in Comfy UI to do this. You just download my apps and there you go. I've made them to be like regular apps for users. You don't have to be a developer. Just like this one here I'm showing is, novel building AI assisted. And so, though this one isn't available to everyone yet, this is version 2 of this one, and only I have it. And even version 1, only people who sign up as on my Patreon, on my private, which has a private Discord attached to it. It's called Story Runners. It's like a membership. If you sign up for that and join my private Discord, then you can download the Tell Me a Tell AI 1.0. And probably at some point I'm going to make 2.0 available. I'm not sure. I mean, I need people to start showing up, and so far no one does. So at some point I may decide just not even to release this. I have to go through a bunch of trouble to package these apps up and put them out there to make them available for people. And when not even a single person downloads them, then it discourages me from making more. So that's kind of the direction I'm going with this. Instead of giving this to people, and I'm putting a bunch of time into building it, I'm just building it for me. Forget everybody else, and I'll make stories and not just stories, but stories with. You have to see where I'm going with this, and I can't really show you just yet. But if I go back here to the interactive story mode, you'll see the direction I'm going to go with that novel builder.
Nessa's eyes glittered with predatory satisfaction as Kale offered the open-ended favor. She reached beneath the bar, withdrawing a narrow slip of vellum sealed in black wax. "You will regret this, Archivist, but I'll remember." Cirrus' jaw tightened, but Kale spoke the oath, feeling the weight of yet another.
And stop the background music. Okay, so you can see how I've got more than just text on the story page. I've got actually an animation back here that the AI chose, which is like some kind of cloudy, foggy animation, and then it generates one or more images. This interactive one only generates one image, but the new novel builder is going to generate more than one image because the playback will be different than this. This is just one way of playing back a novel. This is the way that the interactive storyteller does it. But you can see there's other things down here. So, background music, animation, image, TTS. Unless I'm forgetting something, I think that's it. And then, so it does a presentation of the story as you're going through it. It's not just like you're sitting here editing the story on a page. It's, like right here it says your decision. So normally, I've already been through this part of the story. But if this was new on page 6, like, let me jump to the last page here. There. So
They froze at the edge of darkness, just beyond the reach.
Okay. So you see on this page is a different image, and this image applies to whatever's going on in this page. And it's got the same animation. And then it's got choices down here. And so you can make a choice, or you can type in your own. So it's sort of like a game you're playing. You're making a story, but it's sort of like a role-playing game where you go, I want to do this next, or I want to do that next, or I want to do something totally crazy and different. And it just goes along with you. So it's an interactive story. But this novel builder is not like that. The idea with this one is you go through and build the entire novel. Yeah, you could generate some of the media along the way if you want. Like I can come down here and tell it to generate an image for it if I have the AI running and all that. And but I don't. It's not meant to be like a fun game type thing you're going through on your own. With the book being the result at the end. It's meant to be you make a story and then you render all of the media and then you output it into a viewer, a story viewer, which maybe looks like that one we just looked at, like the interactive story one with a picture and background animations, all this, or it could be a totally different type of layout, maybe like a comic book style layout with multiple images and different frames for where the characters are speaking. Or and I haven't added it in yet, but I've got a. Here, let me show it. Come on. So, oh, so there's also this app, Lip Sync Flow, which makes videos. So you give it a, it's an AI that creates videos. You give it an image of a person. Well, here, let me just play this video and you'll see. She explains it real well and real quick. So I get this image, and I had an AI generate this image. Then I gave this image to my Lip Sync Flow app and said, here's the text I want her to say. Here's the voice, the way, a voice sample of what I want her voice to sound like. Make her say this. And so it creates a video with that picture, with that text, and with that voice sample like this.
Do you have an AI character image you want to speak? Provide your image and a 9-second clip of a sample voice speaking and the text you want spoken. And here I am speaking to you.
Okay, so since I can have it generate images, I could take one of those images. I could ask it to make a profile image of a character so it's looking right at them, and then pass that off to my Lip Sync Flow AI and have it generate videos for each speaking part. So instead of just hearing them speaking, you could actually see a little animation off to the side or whatever, somewhere like I said, a comic book layout or something, where you see each character actually speaking their parts. So I could do quite a bit of different types of display of this. And then as that's being displayed, as it's playing the story back like that and playing all the animation or playing all the media back and everything, background music, TTS, all that, I can just video record it and then make that into into content online. So, I could make this app available to other people, but I'm not getting any supporters so far. From everything I've read about streaming, from books about starting businesses with streaming involved, mainly for marketing, but sometimes as the center of the business, and also watching streamers talk. I've been doing research a couple of years. I've missed streamers for the past 15 years. I didn't pay any attention to them, but the past 2 years I've been watching them and actually talking to some of them and asking them about what they do. But they all say the same thing. Basically, it takes at least a year of nonstop streaming before anybody shows up. So I'm assuming right now that's what's going to happen. Nobody shows up right now. Nobody's takes advantage of my apps yet, but maybe they will. But if not, I'll at least make my own content using this app here. It's really my favorite one anyway. Tell Me to Tell AI. Because I'm a professional software developer. That's not probably going to last much longer with AI out there. But I don't normally have enough time to write an entire novel like I dreamt I was going to when I was a kid. But now I'm going to be able to, with AI's help, assist on all this stuff. Anyway, okay, so enough chit chat. Let's get started on the chapter 3. And what we'll do is have the quick TTS, which is the crappier TTS. It's Microsoft's built-in browser TTS. It doesn't sound that great, but it's fast. It's instant. I don't have to wait for the AI to render each individual piece. So we'll just listen to the story this way. So you don't have to listen to my voice reading it out. goes quicker this way. All right, here we go. Chapter. Hold it. Did I have it render the rest? I did not. So while we're going through these, let's, because that's the mistake I was making yesterday, was making everybody wait on me to continue. So to 73. Darn it. Where are we at right now? 65. So I need 66 to 70. Was it 73? Chapter 3 ends? No, it was 79. 79. And we're currently 66 to 79. All right. So I can have it generating that while we're going through the stories or the pages we have right now. All right, now let's begin. Chapter 3, The Witch and the Curse. And where we left off, before we get started, where we left yesterday in the story was he had just ran away from, he thought he was going to kill the enemy king. He found their tent, found some baby in a manger that, or crib or something that seemed to not be just a baby, the way it looked and smiled and acted and didn't cry and stuff. But all these soldiers came in and surrounded him. He had to dive out of there and run away as fast as he could. He ended up falling off a cliff, jumping off a cliff, falling backwards off a cliff on purpose, basically, just to say, screw it, I'd rather die than let you guys kill me. I'll just die falling off this cliff. And then he's laying down there at the bottom after falling off. Okay, so here we go. Oh, you can see it right there, scene B. So for chapter 3, this first page, broken at the base of a cliff after fleeing the enemy camp, Kel drifts in and out of consciousness while crows and distant scavengers gather around the battlefield's edge. So that's where we're starting off for chapter 3.
Rain thinned toward evening, but the ravine kept its own weather. Cold seeped from the stone, mist over the stream, the smell of crushed fern and blood. Kale drifted toward waking and sank again. Each return taught him some new damage. His left arm lay useless under him. Something in his side grated when he tried to breathe too deeply. His mouth was full of iron. Once he managed to turn his head enough to catch his reflection in a pool between stones, a pale blur under wet dark hair, one gray eye open too wide, a body laid out like carrion. He listened because sight cost too much. Water spoke nearest. Beyond it came the far, dull labor of the battlefield, a horn blown once and not answered, men shouting as if from another country, the thin cry of a horse not yet dead. Closer than any of that were the crows. He heard them settle along the ravine rim, claws ticking on stone, patient as bailiffs. Now and then one gave a harsh, questioning call. Kale tried to move his right hand toward the knife at his belt and found the belt gone. Stripped in the fall, or torn loose. He had only his breath, and even that came badly. He should have been thinking of the child in the enemy tent, or of what Aldrin's death would unleash across the kingdom. Instead his mind kept circling smaller things. His wife's ring had been in his pouch when he jumped. Was it still there? Had the river taken it? He could not feel the pouch through the numbness in his hip. The thought shamed him, but not enough to drive it off. Kingdoms had broken all day. Still he wanted one small thing not to be lost. By full dark the crows had come lower. He saw one on a branch jutting from the ravine wall, black feathers slick with rain, head bent to study him. Another stood on a pale rock near his boots beside a torn scrap of black cloak washed down from above. Kale bared his teeth at it, a soldier's reflex too weak to frighten a bird. The crow did not hop back. It only watched, bright-eyed and calm, as if measuring how much longer flesh could pass for a man.
There's a few parts of that page I didn't really care for. So instead of trying to fix each one individually, let's try doing a more brute force. Let's just say regenerate page 53. Okay. Hold it. Pages. Oh, good. It does actually say it right there. Regenerating page 53. Done. Okay. Go to some other page and go to 53. Okay, so let's read it, have it read it to us again.
Rain thinned toward evening, but the ravine kept its own weather, cold seeping from stone, mist over the stream, the smell of crushed thorn and blood. Kale drifted near the surface of waking and sank again. Each return brought a different pain into command. His shoulder felt split open. His chest ground when he breathed. One boot was gone. He could not remember losing it. Above the cut of the ravine, the sky was a narrow strip of dirty silver, and now and then a black shape crossed it, broad-winged and patient. Crows found him before men did. He heard them first on the rocks upstream, claws ticking, beaks knocking at something soft in the brush. Once one hopped close enough that he saw its head tilt, one bright eye measuring whether he belonged to the living. Kale tried to move his hand. The fingers twitched in the water and no more. The bird flapped back, offended rather than frightened. He almost laughed and coughed blood instead. Far off, beyond the ravine, horns no longer sounded for battle but for gathering. The field was being stripped. Armor, boots, knives, rings from dead hands. By morning the wounded would be lighter by whatever could be cut away. That thought held him for a while. Not honor. Not vengeance. Refusal, bare and stubborn. He forced his right arm under him and pushed until the world burst white at the edges. He rose no farther than an elbow, but it was enough to see his sword lodged between stones a few yards downstream, half under the current. Too far. He sagged back, shaking with the effort, and stared at the ravine wall where rainwater ran in thin dark threads. He had trained men to crawl out of worse ground than this. He had told boys with split lips and broken fingers that breath was a duty. The memory tasted bitter now. Near dusk another sound reached him, not soldiers or hounds, but the loose clatter of a cart somewhere above, with voices carrying in scraps through the wet air. Scavengers, by the sound of them, come late to a battlefield after kings and captains were done with it. Kale shut his eyes and listened, counting distance, judging whether he could still pass for dead if they climbed down. It was a soldier's calculation, cold and useful. Beneath it lay the truth he would not name. If they found the ring on its cord beneath his mail, they would take the last thing he had left.
Okay, that was better. There was one sentence in here. I think it was the first sentence. The smell of crushed thorn and blood. Thorns don't have smell. So what I'm going to do is highlight that and ask it to do an alternative. Thorns do not have smells. And let's see what it comes up with. Yeah, it really wants to put the smell of some kind of plant in there. I'll use that one. And I just, I'll just get rid of that. Oops. There we go. Okay, next page.
Kale woke with cold biting through his teeth. For a moment he did not know where he was, then the ravine returned in pieces, the stream under his cheek, the thorn roots at his back, the weight in his chest, as if a boot heel still pinned him there. He rolled onto his right side and nearly blacked out. The left would not bear him. He dragged his good arm under him, found a purchase on wet stone, and pulled. He dragged himself the length of a shield and stopped. Breath sought in and out. He waited, spat blood into the water, and pulled again. He made for the brush where the ravine narrowed, not because he thought he could escape, but because soldiers searched first where a body ought to be. The stream fought him at the knees and hips, shallow but relentless, turning every stone slick. Twice his hand slipped and his face struck rock. The second time he felt a tooth loosen. He kept going. A veteran's training held where strength failed: keep low, seek cover, give an archer no clear line and a scavenger no easy shape. At last his fingers found his belt. The pouch was still there. He pressed it once, hard enough to hurt, then crawled on. Above, the last sounds of the hunt thinned away. No horn. No hound. No men cursing the rain or calling to one another through the trees. The silence that replaced them felt wrong. Even in bad weather, a forest kept its own noise: drip from pine boughs, insects in the fern beds, the small crackle of things feeding or being fed on. Here there was only water and his own laboring breath. Even the crows had gone quiet. He reached a shelf of roots beneath a leaning alder and tried to drag himself into the dark under it. His right arm trembled, failed, and folded. Kale hit the mud on his shoulder and lay there with one hand buried in dead leaves, too spent to curse. The quiet pressed close around him. Not peace. Not safety. The held breath before something came nearer.
Okay, so there was something in here that I did not like. What was that? Oh, it talked about a pouch again. It's picking up on somewhere in the. Oops. I don't want to go looking through the prompts right now to figure out what it is. That's a new feature I ought to add, is an ability for me to see exactly what prompts are being sent to the AI each time without having to go digging through the developer browser console. It's there, but I just don't. It's not a convenient way to do it. I should be able to just click a button right here and have it quickly pop up and show me, and have it let me search through it. Anyway, so right here, pouch, like that. So that it's become something else. Yeah. Do not know where it's getting the pouch from. I don't remember a pouch in the story. Okay. But that's the second time it's brought up pouch. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, but he's still struggling to survive, but he is alive. Let's continue on.
Night took the ravine early. The strip of sky above the alder roots went from iron to black, and the cold sharpened until the stones seemed to give it back. Kale lay wedged in mud and dead leaves, one knee drawn under him, his left arm numb and heavy as soaked cloth. After a long effort he got his...
I already see something I don't like. Here, and the cold sharpened until the stones seemed to give it back. Yeah, I just don't like what it's saying there about the stone, the cold sharpened until the stones gave it back. I mean, maybe it's just saying the stones were cold too. I don't know. Yeah, that's what it's getting at. Come up with something different. Um, something different from the idea of stones getting cold. Let's see if it comes up with something completely alternative. It's getting closer there to what I was looking for. That's better. Kind of treats it like it's an attacker, the cold, as it's a weapon, like a thin blade. That's better. Now let's have it start again.
Night fell early in the ravine. The strip of sky above the alder roots went from iron to black, and the cold came on hard, thin as a blade. Kale lay wedged in mud and dead leaves, one knee drawn under him, his left arm numb and heavy as soaked cloth. After a long effort he got his right hand inside his tunic and found the cord at his neck. The ring slid into his palm, small and hard and familiar despite the blood on his fingers. He closed his fist around the diamond until its edges bit his skin. He had no prayer fit for a temple, only the rough speech of winter evenings, the kind spoken over banked coals when a man asked the dark to leave one lamp burning till dawn. What came to him was the rough speech of winter evenings, the kind spoken over banked coals when a man asked the dark to leave one lamp burning till dawn. Stay with me, he thought, and
Interesting. That happened yesterday once too, where it duplicated a sentence for some reason. Okay, I will say let's get rid of that entirely. And then I'll have it continue. I don't want to have it read starting from the top again, so I will start from there like that.
what came to him was the rough speech of winter evenings, the kind spoken over banked coals when a man asked the dark to leave one lamp burning till dawn. Stay with me, he thought, and hated himself at once. She had died. He had not kept her. He saw her as he had found her, and the memory stripped the warmth from the ring. I am sorry, he said into the leaves, the words so low they scarcely seemed spoken. Sorry to her. Sorry to Aldrin, who had trusted him. Sorry to a country breaking apart while he hid in a ditch clutching a dead woman's ring like a child's charm. Shame cut cleaner than grief. Grief drowned a man, shame kept him awake. He counted what he had lost with a soldier's habit for inventory, king, oath, home, sword, horse, the message he had failed to carry, the truth of what he had seen in the enemy pavilion. Last of all he counted himself, and found little worth keeping. If the black-clad riders came down at dawn, they would not find a captain of the guard. They would haul out a cripple too stubborn to die properly. He pressed the ring to his lips anyway. Not from hope, but from refusal. If he still held it, then one thing in the world had not been taken cleanly from him. Kale let his head rest against the roots and listened to the stream in the dark. Somewhere above, a crow gave a single dry call, and from farther up the ravine came the faint crack of a branch under careful weight.
Okay. So back to that same sentence. I still don't like it. I want it to come up with something different entirely. That's better. Yeah, I like that one better. Okay, so that was nice and easy. And I know what's coming here. I don't know if it's on the next page just yet, but it's coming here real quick. Okay, so next page. We'll see. See what the beat for the next page is. At dawn, a bent figure moves among the corpses above. Yep, that's it. All right, so let's go. Oh, it's a real short page.
Dawn came gray and thin, revealing the battlefield above the ravine in strips between alder roots and wet stone. Kale woke to a new sound, not soldiers, not crows, but the patient clink of metal on bone. He could see little from where he lay, only the slope beyond the rim where bodies had fallen among bent grass and broken spears. A figure moved there, stooped against the morning cold, stopping at each corpse with the same unhurried care a butcher might give a carcass. She rolled bodies with her foot, cut straps, opened purses, and worked rings from swollen fingers. Once she knelt and cut the straps from a dead horse's bridle to free the brass cheek piece. Nothing in her manner suggested haste, pity, or revulsion. She worked as if the dead were her due.
Okay.
The figure on the slope was a woman, though at first Kale took her for some bundled scavenger boy. She was small and gaunt under a confusion of layered coats and shawls, all of them stripped from the dead. Black hair hung in ropes around a face the color of old paper. Bone charms clicked at her belt when she bent. She had a knife in one hand and a sack in the other, and she moved among the bodies with a collector's eye, choosing what to take and what to leave for the crows. When she straightened, he saw her profile against the gray light. Long nose, sharp chin, and an expression of mild interest, as if the field were only a market stall picked clean too early. She paused above the ravine. Her head lifted. Kale watched her nostrils flare once in the cold air, and his body went still before his mind understood why. She turned not toward the richest dead on the slope but toward the alder thicket where he lay hidden. "There you are," she said, almost pleasantly. He tried to draw his knife and remembered again that it was gone. His right hand closed instead on wet leaves and the ring at his throat. The woman began her descent without caution, boots finding holds in shale.
Okay. That was like a random try, but I'm afraid not. Give me an alternative for that. He doesn't need to touch his ring while he's trying to get his knife. The ring's around his neck. Okay, well, I guess I need to remind it or tell it exactly what I just said. Um, There we go. Okay, so now let's let it finish.
He went for his knife, then remembered again that it was no longer there. His right hand found only wet leaves and the ring at his throat. The woman began her descent without caution, boots finding holds in shale and root as if she knew the ravine better than the dead above it. Up close her clothes were worse than he had thought. A soul.
Okay. I didn't like that metaphor, whatever that woman. Whoa, that sentence is still there. What? Let's try this again. Okay, now it's there. I don't know what happened before. Yeah, right there. That's the metaphor. Like, what the hell's that even mean? Boots finding holds in shell and root. I mean, just that by itself is. Yeah, you could have just ended right there. You didn't need any additional. Oops. Okay. Now let's try this again.
He snatched for his knife, then remembered again that it was no longer at his belt. His right hand found only wet leaves and empty air. The woman began her descent without caution, boots finding holds in shale and root. Up close her clothes were worse than he had thought, a soldier's wool sleeve sewn to a priest's dark robe, a child's red mitten tied among pouches of teeth and dried herbs, brass buttons from 6 different houses. Blood had dried black in the seams of her cuffs. Her eyes looked black, not for their color alone but for the way they swallowed light. She crouched just beyond his reach and looked him over with open amusement, from the ruined mail at his shoulder to the signet clasp at his torn collar. "Fine work," she murmured. "Good steel. Good stitching. Old scars. Someone spent years making you expensive." Her gaze settled on his face. "And still breathing. That is greed, in a man like you." Cale bared his teeth and pushed himself up on one arm. The effort made his vision swim. The woman smiled wider, showing small, worn teeth. "Easy," she said. "I only came to see what the battle left behind."
Okay. Next. Uh-oh. Discard unsaved inline. No. No. Thank you. Didn't notice I had not clicked save. Next.
Murrin set her sack down in the mud and leaned close enough for Cale to smell grave soil under the rain. Her fingers, cold despite the damp, touched his jaw and turned his face toward the weak light.
Okay. See what it comes up with from that. more ominous and witch-like. Grave soil, what the hell ever. You know, some of its adjectives it comes up with are. I wonder if I got the creativity knob turned up on this AI. Maybe I should go check and set it to 0 and just because it's already creative enough as it is. But anyway, here we go. That's pretty good. Okay. All right. So I was going to jump back before page 58. I was going to jump back and check the config for this AI. Let's see here. Give me just a second as I do this. Yeah, it did have a little bit there of temperature. I want to set the temperature to 0 to see what happens. Okay, so let's start again. Well, just the whole thing.
Murrin set her sack down in the mud and bent near enough that Kale smelled damp grave mold on her, sharp and foul beneath the rain. Her fingers, cold despite the damp, touched his jaw and turned his face toward the weak light. He let his head loll. The effort of stillness cost less than a struggle he could not win. One black eye, then the other, studied him with a butcher's concentration. "Not old," she said. "That helps." Her thumb pressed the lower lid of his left eye, exposing the bloodshot white. "Clouding, but not spoiled. A pity about the bruising." She clicked her tongue and glanced at the split in his scalp, the broken line of his mouth. "War knows no value. It smashes a prince in a ditch soldier with the same hammer." She shifted nearer on her haunches, bone charms ticking softly. From one sleeve she drew a narrow brass probe and used it to lift his eyelid again, peering as if into a jewel for flaws. Kale fixed his gaze on the gray sky and counted breaths. If she knew he lived, she might finish what the fall had begun. If she thought him dead, she might rob him and go. Murrin muttered on, half to him, half to the dead around them. "Kings spend men like lamp oil. Burn them bright, burn them fast, then scrape the dish clean. And afterward who gathers what remains? Not kings." Her mouth bent in a private smile. "Women like me. We take the teeth, the rings, the marrow, and call it thrift." The word rings struck through the haze. Her hand moved from his face to his throat, feeling along the cord beneath his torn tunic. Kale's pulse kicked once, hard enough that he was sure she must feel it. Murrin paused. For the first time her expression sharpened from idle appraisal to interest. "Ah," she said softly. "There you are." She drew out the diamond ring on its cord and held it between finger and thumb. Mud, blood, and gray dawn did nothing to dull the stone. Murrin's black eyes reflected its light in 2 pinpoints. "A wife's keepsake on a dead man," she murmured. "Waist upon waist." Her gaze returned to his face, measuring him anew, and one stained finger rested lightly on the closed lid of his right eye, as if weighing whether to take the ring or the eye first. Murrin's other hand disappeared into the folds at her waist and came back with a narrow knife, its blade clean, which made the dried blood on her cuffs look deliberate. She held the ring up once more, judging the stone against the weak morning, and Kale understood with a cold, practical clarity that she had not yet decided which prize mattered more. His eye. The ring. Whatever she thought she could strip from a man who could no longer stop her. He tried to keep still. Veterans' discipline, nothing more. Dead men did not tense. Dead men did not breathe through their teeth. Pain betrayed him. It surged from his crushed side, and a sound escaped before he could choke it back, a rough groan, low but unmistakably human. His shoulder jerked against the roots. Murrin stopped with the knife half raised. Irritation crossed her face, first plain, immediate, with no trace of fear or pity. "Oh, don't start that now," she said. "You had the good manners to seem dead a moment ago." Her black eyes narrowed. She leaned closer, studying the pulse in his throat, the tremor in his jaw. Stubborn thing. Kale moved then, because pretense was finished. His right hand shot for her wrist. He was fast by any ordinary measure, wounded, he was only desperate. Murrin drew back before he could close his grip, quick and effortless. The knife never wavered. "There he is," she murmured, sounding almost pleased. "I wondered whether there was enough of you left to bargain with." She tucked the ring into her palm and set the knife's point under his eye, not touching, only promising. "Listen carefully, soldier. If I wanted you dead, I would wait. If I wanted you blind, I would not." He stared at her and saw no madness there, which was worse. Only appetite, patience, and the calm of someone sorting spoils. Kale's arm shook with the effort of holding himself up. He could lunge and die for a ring already in her hand, or lie still and let this carrion woman set the price of his life. The choice sickened him because it was no choice at all. Murrin smiled, small and worn. "Good," she said. "Now we can speak plainly." Murrin did not answer at once. She sat back on her heels and looked him over with the same cool attention she had given the dead above, weighing whether he belonged with them yet. Her gaze moved to the crushed male at his side, the dark spread of blood under him, the angle of his left leg where the fall had twisted it wrong. She touched his ribs with 2 fingers. Kale bit down on the pain and tasted iron. She said. "Broken. More than one. Lung not gone, or you'd be pink at the mouth." Her hand slid to his scalp, parting blood-clotted hair to inspect the split beneath. Head cracked, but not enough. "Shame. Clean endings are kinder." She said it as plainly as a woman naming the price of salt. The knife rested easy in her hand. Kale watched her wrist, the tendons there, the distance to her throat. He measured each chance and discarded it. Too slow. Too weak. She would open him before he got a hand on her. Murrin seemed to read the count in his face and smiled without warmth. "There's the soldier again. Counting roads that lead nowhere." She lowered the blade and, with her free hand, searched the torn front of his tunic more thoroughly. Not groping now, but hunting. Her stained fingers found the cord at his neck, dried stiff with blood against his skin. She drew it out inch by inch until the diamond ring came free into the gray light. For the first time, she went still. The stone was small, but it caught what little dawn there was and gave it back cold. Kale forgot the knife. He reached for the ring on instinct alone. Murrin caught his wrist and pinned it to the mud with surprising strength. "A wife's ring," she said, studying the diamond rather than him. "Kept through battle, rout, and a fall into a grave left open. So this is what you chose over water, over bandages, over sense." Her thumb rubbed the blood-dark cord. Recognition narrowed her eyes. Not pity. Not greed alone. "No," she murmured. "Not chose. Clung." She lifted her gaze to his at last. "That can be used."
Okay, so she just pulled the ring from around his neck. But I thought earlier they were saying that she had it in her hand. So it doesn't say that she like took it off from around his neck, so it's probably just still around his neck, and she's just holding the ring in her hand. And then here, well, here it says she notices the diamond ring hanging from around his neck. So, okay, so they didn't need to talk about the ring at all on this page. Um, it was getting ahead of itself. So let's edit it manually. So that means I probably should regenerate this whole page, because I don't want to try to edit this whole thing to figure out all just because it shouldn't even be talking about the ring on this page. If I just regenerate the page, it should get rid of it might get rid of the ring. We'll see. 59. Okay, it's done. See if it's talking about a ring again or not. It did once. Her gaze dropped once more to the ring hanging between them. Now you are troublesome. It only mentions ring once here. And she easy. She murmured with no kindness. If you, yeah, I mean, it knows a ring is coming up or something, so it's trying to inject it into the story at this point, but that's not necessary. In fact, this whole part here could just go, and it would be just the same. Well, you should have done it before I chose easy. Okay, so I think that's it right there. So, okay, so let's go through this one and then continue on, since I regenerated this one.
Murren's other hand disappeared into the folds at her waist and came back with a narrow knife, its edge clean enough to shame the grime on her hands. She held it up beside his face, judging the light on it, not hurrying. Kale watched through half-lidded eyes and understood at last that she had no fear of him at all.
I liked what it had here before. It was something about it made the blood look intentional. So, it said something similar to that before. Deliberate, purposeful. Let's go with deliberate. All right.
Murren's other hand disappeared into the folds at her waist and came back with a narrow knife, its blade so clean the blood on her clothes looked almost deliberate. She held it up beside his face, judging the light on it, not hurrying. Cale watched through half-lidded eyes and understood at last that she had no fear of him at all. To her he already belonged with the bodies on the slope above, a little warmer, perhaps, but no less a corpse to strip. He gathered what strength he had left into his right hand, meaning to seize her wrist when she leaned close. The command went from mind to muscle and died in the wreck of him. A sound escaped him instead, low and raw, not a word, barely breath snagging on pain. But it was enough. Murren stopped with the knife point a finger's width from his eye. Her mouth flattened. "Oh, don't start that now," she said, as if he had inconvenienced her by refusing to stay dead. She set 2 fingers to his throat again. Feeling the weak beat there, her irritation sharpened into something colder and more attentive. Stubborn meat. Cale tried to turn his head away. The movement sent a white flare through his ribs and shoulder, and the world tilted with it. He bit down on another groan. Murren caught his jaw in her hand and held him still with surprising strength. Up close he could see the red half-moons of old blood under her nails, the fine cracks in her lips. "Easy," she murmured, with no kindness in it. "If you meant to live, you should have done it before I chose." She sat back on her heels, knife resting across her knee, and considered him in silence. Cale saw the change happen behind her eyes, not pity, not alarm, but calculation. A living man could answer questions. A dying one could bargain. A dead one could be opened at leisure. He forced his numb fingers toward the cord at his throat, too slow to stop her, too proud to beg. Murren noticed anyway. Her smile returned, thin and mean. "Yes," she said. "That first."
Okay. So that just made me think of something for maybe improving how it creates stories. I mean, this page is fine now, but the thing where it was trying to talk about the ring 1 page too early, I wonder if the prompts. Where's my cursor? I wonder if the prompts are not including anything that's about to happen. Okay, so let's ask it to find out. Sent the prompt that is built and sent to the chat AI plugin. Darn it! Come on. The chat AI plugin for generating a story page includes previous pages of the story to encourage consistency. Does the prompt also include any information about the pages the next few pages in the story after the current page? So I already have the prompt sending in the previous pages of the story. Not all of them, but enough for it to see where it's at in the story and then generate the next page. But it might help if it knows what's coming up in the story to come up with, to not make mistakes on a page that's like right before, like what we just saw, where the page before us are talking about a ring, even though she discovered the ring on the next page. All right. So what does it say? Oh, bottom line, yeah, consistency is supported by recent prose and the outline plus the current beat. The prompt does not add the next few pages breakdown beats, or unless you count the course chapter descriptions. And okay, so it does not do that. So we could probably improve it. Let's make sure this is saved. I do not remember what that change was. Oh. Okay. Create a plan to include the breakdown beats for the 5 pages after the current page and instruct the AI to use them to anticipate what is coming to make the current page flow in a consistent manner. Yeah, as an author, and you're creating a book, you can know what's coming up next. You have a little plan about what you're about to write, and so you can make this page do things that play right into those pages, as well as do what's supposed to be done on this page. So it didn't have that in its instructions, and apparently, so we're going to. I don't know, maybe I'll just regenerate all the rest of the pages that I just generated. That's why I said yesterday I probably shouldn't generate too many pages all at once, because I'll end up wanting to fix something, and then they'll all have to be thrown away and done again, which is what just happened. All right, so okay, so it's done. It changed one file, that one. Okay, so let's go make a copy of all of our web content. Into the folder where the exe is, and then we'll go rerun it. Okay, wrong app. There we go. Rerun the story app. Okay, so then where did I leave off? I just made a change. Oh, for regenerating the story pages, yeah. Okay, so that one was fine. 60, yeah, 60 was fine. Darn it, everything after 60 would have to be regenerated. Look at that. But that's why I'm doing this. So it's going to be 60, let's just say 61 to 65 for now, because I don't know if this is even going to work, the change I just made. And it'll take less time. 61 to 65 instead of 61 to 79. And then I'll have to regenerate all those after 66. What did I tell it to do? 61 to 65. So it's 66 to 79 after that. Okay, so once these get done, then I'll hit that so that it's regenerating. Oh, crap. Yeah, I don't want to do that because I may not even like what those 4 pages, how they generated. So let's take a note on this for now. Yep. Takes a little time. Even though it's only 4 pages, it has to. There's a lot of prompt stuff being sent, pieces of information being sent to it. It has to sort through all that for every page. That's what makes it keep things consistent, the story consistent with the premise, keep the story consistent with the characters, keep the story consistent with the previous pages, so on and so forth. Otherwise, it just generates basically random pieces of different stories and just sticks them all together. That's what my first attempts were like, but okay, now it's done. Okay, so let's go to the next page, and this is the first one that was generated with those new prompts that send in the future pages for it to see that are coming up. So we'll see what happens here.
Murrin kept his wrist in the mud and bent closer, the ring hanging between them on its cord. Kale could not tell whether the cold in her face came from greed or calculation. Calculation was worse. Greed was simple, calculation meant time, and time meant she had found a use for him. You marched under banners, she said. You had a king, a wife, a house with a door to bar at night. Men like you are made of oaths, fed on them until you mistake the chain for your own spine. Her thumb pressed the diamond into his skin through the blood-stiff cord. And when all that is cut away, still you hold. Kale dragged at his trapped arm. The effort shook him and drove a wet stab through his side. He swallowed the sound. Murrin noticed anyway. Her smile thinned. There. That. She let go of his wrist at last, only to lay her palm flat over the broken rise of his ribs, feeling the labor of his breath. You should have gone into the dark with the others. I have seen men die of less before the flies found them. But you stayed for a ring and a memory. Her black eyes lifted to his. Or perhaps because something in you is too proud to yield to a wound. He found enough voice for one word. Give. It came out cracked and small, but it was still a command, and for an instant he was not carrion in a ditch but a captain on a field. Murrin's expression changed at that. Not fear. Delight, mean, and private. She sat back, still holding the ring, and looked at him as if something buried had spoken. Yes, she said softly. There you are. Above them, crows gathered in the alder branches, black shapes against the widening sky. Murrin tilted her head, listening as if they offered counsel. Her fingers closed around the diamond until her knuckles showed pale through the grime. A man who will not loose the dead, she murmured, more to herself than to him. A man who will not die when he should. She tucked the knife away. That frightened Kale more than the blade had. When she leaned over him again, her face held the patient interest of a craftswoman who had stopped sorting scrap and found something rarer.
Okay, we'll see what it comes up with. As you can see, it's still a chat type situation, AI you're dealing with here, so you can just talk to it about how you want things to be adjusted. Yeah, that one's not bad. Okay. Okay. So that works. Next page.
Murren's hand went to the cord at his throat again, no longer searching but taking. Kale caught her wrist with what strength he had left. It was a poor grip, 2 numb fingers and a thumb slick with his own blood. She looked down at his hand as if a dead branch had brushed her sleeve. Still, she said. You soldiers do love a last refusal. Her knife came back into her hand so quickly he barely saw it. One short draw, neat as a tailor's cut, parted the cord. The ring dropped into her palm. The loss hit him harder than the knife would have. Kale lunged on instinct, and pain answered from every broken place in him. His arm failed. He sagged back into the wet leaves, breath sawing, while Murren closed her fingers around the ring. Mud streaked the stone. Blood from the cut cord marked her knuckles. She studied it with grave attention, as if theft were only the first step in something larger. There, she murmured. Now you look like what's left. Kale tried to curse her, but his mouth gave him only a hoarse scrape. Above the alders, the sky had faded from iron to a thin, dirty white. Crows shifted in the branches, waiting. Murren bent until her face filled his sight, black eyes bright in the paper-dry ruin of her skin. Listen well, if you can, she said. Gold buys hands. Bread buys silence. Fear buys obedience for a night. But grief, her fingers tightened over the ring. Grief makes the strongest chain. Men drag it farther than iron and call the weight their own. The words reached him through pain and cold, as if from the bottom of a well. He caught only pieces, grief, chains, the soft pleasure in her voice. Her free hand touched his brow, almost gentle, and he hated that more than the knife. You are too broken to learn from this, Murren said. No matter. Broken things hold lessons well. Kale tried to hold her gaze, to keep one clear thought alive long enough to hate her, but the ravine had begun to tilt, and her face blurred into dark cloth, bone charms, and the hard glint of his wife's ring in her fist.
Okay, let's do a little editing here. Yeah, I'm not spelling that right. There's A in there. voice typing. Interesting. Yeah, well, there it is. Broken things hold lessons well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care for that phrase. What do you do? Oh, I need to save. That's the problem. Um, come up with something that sounds broken things hold uh, like it hints at the future. Yeah, I like that one. Okay. So that's the end of that page. Okay, for just in case anyone ends up watching this, just another explanation again. This TTS here that we're using to listen to each page is the quick TTS that's built into the browser. It's not the high quality AI one that you would use to finish up the content for the story when you're done. That one takes a lot longer, like minutes, just to render one piece of the text. So it would actually take hours and hours to get the whole book done. Um, so while we're sitting here working with it, working on the book, I just use the super fast quick read built into the browser. Okay, so let's continue on with the story.
Murrin did not put the ring away. She crouched over him with the dawn widening behind her, one hand braced on her knee, the other closed around the diamond as if weighing it against his life. Cale saw the tendons stand out in her wrist. Her fingers tightened. For a heartbeat nothing happened. Then a dry crack came from her fist, small and sharp as a knuckle breaking. He stared, not understanding. No jeweler's tool, no hammerstone, only that stained hand tightening past what seemed possible. When she opened her palm, the diamond was no longer the ring's bright eye but a spill of pale grit in jagged shards, streaked with blood where the setting had bitten into her skin. Cale found enough strength to move his head an inch. No, the word scraped out of him. It did not stop her. Murrin looked down at the ruin in her hand with a craftsman's satisfaction, as if she had reduced not a keepsake but a stubborn material to use. With her thumbnail she ground the larger fragments against her palm until they broke finer. Blood welled brighter through the dust. She bent close, and he heard her begin to speak, not loudly, not in any tongue he knew, but in a string of clipped syllables that seemed made for the back of the throat and the roof of the mouth. Old words, or words worn old by use around the dying. She smeared the mixture with 2 fingers, making a gray-red paste. Bone charms clicked softly at her throat. Her black eyes never left his face. Cale tried to lift an arm and could not. Tried to spit at her and had no water left in him for it. The helplessness bit deeper than pain. He had failed to save a village, a king, his wife. Now he could not even defend the last thing he had carried from that life. Murrin seemed to read that knowledge in his face. Her mouth curved. Yes, she murmured, the strange syllables pausing as her bloodied fingers hovered above his chest. Hold to what is gone. That opens the door. The paste glittered faintly in her hand, diamond ground into dust, blood darkening it to ash. Around them the ravine stayed cold in ordinary wet leaves, alder roots, the stink of mud and old slaughter, yet Cale felt the air tighten, as if something had leaned nearer to listen.
Okay, so one little change I want to make here the blood darkening it to ash. I want it to darken it to paste. Next page.
Murrin let the gray-red paste sift from her fingers over the torn front of Kale's tunic. Diamond dust.
Actually, this is working. So 64 and 65 are the two left from that last render. So let's come back here and get these going while we're listening to these next two pages. All right.
Murrin let the gray-red paste sift from her fingers over the torn front of Kale's tunic. Diamond dust caught in the blood at his collarbone, in the wet hair on his chest, and in the seam where broken mail had torn through cloth. Some of it vanished into his wounds. Some lay on his skin and shone there with a hard, cold light that did not belong to Dawn. She kept speaking in that cramped, ugly tongue, each word clipped short as if bitten off. The air above him seemed to thicken with it. Kale smelled iron, mud, and something else now like rain striking old stone in a sealed place underground. The whispering began so faintly he took it at first for blood in his ears. Not one voice. Many.
Okay, that whole thing there just is weird. Okay, now that one's getting to something better right there. Let's go with that. I kind of get what it's trying to do, but okay. So where did I leave off here? Okay, right there. So let's continue from here.
The whispering began so faintly he took it at first for blood in his ears. Not one voice. Many. Men, women, a child somewhere among them, all speaking too low to make out and too close to be anywhere but inside the hollow of his skull. He tried to shut them out and found there was no shutting. The murmur slid through him, beneath pain, breath, and thought. A few words rose clear and were lost again. Rise, return, not yet, again. Murrin heard them too. He knew it by the way her mouth twitched, pleased but wary now, as if she had baited a trap and caught something larger than she meant to. Cold spread from the places where the dust.
And I don't like that. He cannot tell what she can hear by her mouth twitching. Perhaps he can by the way she looks at him. Okay, that one will work. Yeah. And that can end right there. Interesting. Wonder why it doesn't let me add it to the dictionary. Anyway, let's continue on. I know I better save, then continue on.
Cold spread from the places where the dust touched him. Not the clean cold of winter air, but a deep.
I don't like that either. Cold spread from the places where the dust touched him. Oh, like the diamond dust that she's. Okay, I was getting confused.
Cold spread from the places where the dust touched him. Not the clean cold of winter air, but a deep inward chill, as though a hand had reached between his ribs and closed around the last of his heat. His back arched against the mud. The ravine blurred. For an instant he saw not with his eyes, but with some rawer part of him a road of black water under a starless sky, with shapes standing in it shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Then the vision broke, and he was in the alder roots again with Murrin above him and the whispers crowding closer. He fought for one breath, then another, refusing because refusal was the last weapon left to him. Murrin leaned down until her hair brushed his cheek, her jet dark eyes fixed on his face. The last of the diamond dust glittered on his skin like frost.
Okay, let's see here. There is no reason to be talking about refusal here. Use something else or just get rid of the extra. That one sounds better. That one's even better.
He fought for one breath, then another, wringing each from the dark by sheer will. Murrin leaned down until her hair brushed his cheek, her jet dark eyes fixed on his face. The last of the diamond dust glittered on his skin like frost. The voices pressed in, soft and eager, promising not mercy or peace, only continuance. Life dragged back by the throat. A life with the door barred shut. Kale tried to curse her and gave the dark only a ragged gasp.
Okay, let's go to the next page.
Murrin pressed her bloodied fingers to the center of his chest, just above the broken line of his ribs. The paste burned cold. Kale jerked under her hand, and the whispers in his skull sharpened into words he still could not understand, except for one that came again and again in her cracked voice as she bent over him, his name. Not the title he had carried in camp, not captain, not soldier. Kale, spoken as if she were carving it into him. Each time she said it, the cold drove deeper. Her thumb smeared a mark across his skin, a hooked shape dark with blood and diamond grit, and the air in the ravine seemed to draw tight around it. Mine, she said at last in the common tongue, flat and final. By grief kept. By death returned. By my hand called back until the calling holds. Her palm flattened over the mark. Kale tried to strike her and managed only a weak lift of his arm before Pain dropped it. The failure shamed him more than the words. Murrin saw it and smiled. Men buried shame, fed it, let it harden into silence. A curse could root deep there. The ravine vanished. For an instant he was nowhere, falling through depths that could not belong to one life. Steel in his throat. Black water filling his lungs. Snow crusted red beneath his cheek. Fire eating the air from a room with no door. Each death ended in the same wrenching return, and each return stripped something human away, a hand pale as old wax, an eye that caught no light, ribs on the right side gone clear as river ice with a dim shine inside. He saw himself rise from mud, from ash, from a heap of bodies, less a man each time and still walking. Then the vision snapped. He was back under the alder roots with Murrin's hand on his chest and mud cold at his neck. Her face had lost some of its amusement. Not fear, exactly, but respect edged with irritation, as if the curse had shown her more than she meant to see. She bent close enough for him to smell grave soil on her breath. "You hear me now," she said softly. "If you run marked. If you die, something of you stays dead." Kale dragged in a ragged breath and fixed on her with all the hatred he had left, because hatred was still his own, and for the moment that was the only ground under him.
Okay. Okay. Let's get rid of that.
Then the vision snapped. He was back under the alder roots with Murrin's hand on his chest and mud cold at his neck. Her face had lost some of its amusement. Not fear, exactly, but respect edged with irritation, as if the curse had shown her more than she meant to see. She bent close enough for him to smell grave soil on her breath. "You hear me now," she said softly.
Okay, next page.
Murrin held his gaze a moment longer, as a buyer tests a blade for hidden flaws. Whatever she found seemed to please her. She lifted her hand from his chest, and the mark throbbed once, deep and wrong, as if something under his skin had answered and gone still. Cale's breath came thin and ragged. He could not feel his fingers. He felt the absence of the ring more sharply than pain. The witch sat back on her heels and wiped her bloody fingertips on the hem of her scavenged skirts. From those layered rags she drew a small leather pouch and tipped in the bent gold setting of the ring, along with the last diamond grit clinging to her palm. She added other things from the mud around him with brisk economy, a snapped mail link, a clod of blood-soaked cloth, 2 of his hairs caught on her sleeve. Nothing wasted. Nothing left behind if it might serve her later. "You were expensive," she said. "Do try to live long enough to justify it." She rose, gaunt and steady, bone trinkets clicking softly against one another. The crows above shifted. Cale tried to push himself up, to catch her ankle, to do anything but lie broken while she walked away with what remained of his wife. His body gave him only a shudder. Murrin looked down at his failed effort and gave a laugh too dry to be merry. "There is the cruel part," she said. "Not that death comes. That it leaves work unfinished." Then she turned from him and climbed the ravine wall by the alder roots, black hair hanging in ropes, the satchel bumping against her hip. Near the top she paused and glanced back, her eyes dark in the widening light. "Keep your hatred," she called softly. "It keeps men from lying down." Another papery laugh drifted after her, and then she was gone toward the field above, where the dead waited. Cale lay in the mud beneath the roots, listening until even the crows went still.
I want to change this sentence as well. Okay, next page.
Time did not pass cleanly. It came apart into scraps, white sky through alder branches, black water lapping at stone steps that could not be there, the taste of blood gone sour in his mouth, crows arguing overhead like old men at a grave. Once he thought someone was kneeling over him again, fingers at his throat, and he spent what little strength he had trying to turn his head away. He found only empty air and the wet smell of leaves. Another time he heard marching ordered, measured, a company crossing frozen ground, but when he forced his eyes open there was only the ravine wall, slick with mud, and roots like knotted hands. Sleep came in scraps and broke apart whenever pain surged through him. Pain returned before sense did. It settled into him piece by piece, the split ache in his side, the deep bruised throb in his chest, the hot stitch under his shoulder blade where a spear point had gone in. Cold lay under all of it, deep in the mud and deeper in his bones. He was shivering when he finally understood that no one else was breathing nearby. No horse stamped. No harness creaked. No low voice muttered over a dying man. The crows had come back to their ordinary sounds. Dawn or some later light, he could not tell, filled the ravine with a flat gray that showed every root, every stone, every smear of blood. Kale opened his eyes and kept them open. He lay half on his back in the mud, one arm numb beneath him, mail torn, cloak soaked through and stiffening. His first clear thought was not gratitude. It was inventory. Sword? Not in hand. Dagger? Unknown. Pack? Gone from sight. He tried to remember how he had come to be here and found only battle breaking apart into noise, the enemy camp, a woman's face hanging over him. Not a Kemp healer. Not any scavenger he knew. Thin, dark, old as bark, and twice as hard. The memory slid when he reached for it. He drew a careful breath and nearly blacked out from the pain of it. Alive, then, against reason. Alive and alone in a ditch after a lost battle, with his gear scattered and his memory in pieces. Kale shut his eyes once, opened them again, and stared up at the pale branches until the spinning eased and anger found its footing. Someone had found him before the crows did. Someone had put hands on him. That much was certain. Whether they had saved him, cursed him, or merely searched him, he could not yet tell. He made himself remember by touch before he trusted memory. His left hand crawled across his chest through torn cloth, over tacky blood, over the dented edge of broken mail. The chain at his throat was gone. So was the weight that should have hung beneath it. For a moment his fingers kept searching anyway, clumsy and stubborn, as if gold might be found by insistence. They met only skin, cold mud, and the raised tenderness where someone had handled him. Kale went still. The ring had survived fire, flight, and battle. He had worn it under his armor, hidden from thieves and camp. The ring had survived fire, flight, and battle. He had worn it under his armor, hidden from thieves and camp followers alike, because it was the last thing in the world that had rested on her hand before he took it into his keeping. He saw again, not clearly but clearly enough, the woman bent over him in the ravine, black hair in ropes, a face like old leather, eyes too intent to be merciful. Not a healer. Not a passerby. A scavenger with a patient touch. He had been dying, and she had searched him like a corpse before the breath was fully out. Clarity came hard and mean. She had found a soldier too stubborn to die, used whatever hedgecraft or battlefield trick had bought him a few more hours, and taken her payment. Perhaps she had meant to keep him alive long enough to rob him properly. Perhaps she had seen the ring and decided a half-dead man was worth the trouble. The why did not matter. The fact did. He had failed to protect even this last thing of hers. His jaw locked until pain flared in the muscles. He stared at the gray branches above and let shame burn down into anger. Anger could still be used. If the woman was near, he would find her. If she had gone, he would remember her face and add it to the tally of those he meant to answer for. Kale closed his hand over the empty place at his chest until his knuckles whitened, then released it slowly. First he needed breath, footing, a weapon. Vengeance could wait a little. Loss could wait. It had waited this long already.
Next page.
Kale rolled onto his left side and planted his palm in the mud. The effort sent a hard white flash through his chest. He stopped there, teeth bared, waiting for the dark to pass. Men had lived through worse. Men had also died of less. He set his right knee under him, found a root, and dragged himself upright by inches until he was kneeling beneath the alder tangle, head bowed, breath sawing in and out. The world tilted. He expected the next breath to fail, the next pain to finish what the battle had begun. It did not. The mismatch set his teeth on edge. He tested himself with a soldier's economy. Fingers moved. Wrists held. No wet flood in the belly. The spear wound under his shoulder blade had clotted. His ribs felt cracked on the right, perhaps broken clean through, yet when he pressed there through torn cloth the hurt came muffled, wrong, as if the blow had landed on someone else. He took another breath, shallow and careful, and looked down at the ruin of his mail and tunic. Blood, mud, rents from blade and point. Enough to kill him twice over, unless his body had forgotten the count. Kale spat red into the leaves and pushed the thought aside. Alive was a fact. The reason could wait. His sword lay 3 paces off, half hidden in sedge, the grip dark with wet. He crawled to it, cursing once under his breath when his side struck a stone. The dagger turned up next, still sheathed at the back of a bramble where someone had tossed his belt and missed. His pack had been opened and stripped of anything worth easy taking, coin, flint, dried meat, the small whetstone wrapped in cloth. A water skin remained, nearly empty. So did a spare shirt, a needle case, and a length of cord. Practical theft. Whoever had gone through his things had worked fast, but with a clear head. He buckled the sword on with stiff hands and shrugged into what was left of the pack. At the edge of the brush he paused, one hand braced on the ravine wall, listening to the empty morning above. No voices. No harness. Only crows, patient as tax collectors. Whoever had robbed him was gone. Whatever had spared him had not finished with him yet. Kale set his jaw and began the climb.
Okay, 2 changes I see here. I do not want to tell the reader ahead of time that whoever had spared him had not finished with him yet. He has no way of knowing that, and the reader doesn't need to know that. And then up here somewhere, alive was the fact. Okay, next page.
The ravine lip gave under his hands twice before he hauled himself over it. He came up on one knee in dead grass silvered with frost, head down, one palm sunk in the churned earth. The wind struck him first. It carried the old iron stink of blood, the sweeter rot already beginning under it, and the greasy reek of burned cloth and horse flesh. When the dizziness eased, Kale lifted his head.
It sure does like to smell iron and steel. Where was that at? It carried the old iron stink. The old... Just that'd be fine.
The field ran wide between low ridges, and the defeat was plain across all of it. Standards he had marched behind were down in the mud, their poles snapped, their colors burned to black rags or trampled so deep only a corner showed through the muck. Wagons stood where they had broken, wheels split, axles canted, one still half-charred and smoking faintly from a bed of wet ash. Dead horses lay in their harness with their bellies swollen tight. Here and there the armor of fallen men caught the flat morning light, not bright enough to look noble, only enough to show where the crows had gathered thickest. Beyond them, the camp they had died trying to break was a smear of torn canvas, collapsed palisade, and darkened ground. No battle noise remained. The silence after slaughter was worse. It meant the killing was done, and whoever had survived had moved on. Cale forced himself to read the ground as he would have yesterday, before blood loss and grief had made every thought drag. The line had not broken in one place, it had folded in on itself. Men had run here, been ridden down there, made a stand around the wagons and failed. He could see the shape of command in the wreckage, and the shape of panic after it. His king had trusted this field to hold. Cale had trusted his own strength to matter here. Looking over the ruin, he understood how little one hard man could do once a rout began. A crow stood on a fallen shield not 20 paces away, its beak working at what lay beneath it. Cale rested a hand on his sword hilt and scanned the waist again, jaw set, still searching for some sign that one banner yet stood.
Next page.
He moved along the edge of the killing ground. The middle was too open, and habit still told him where survivors might crawl, into ditches, behind broken wagons, under the lee of dead horses where arrows could not find them. Each step jarred his ribs. Frost cracked under his boots where the sun had not reached, and the mud between was black with churned blood. Twice he saw a cloak in his own colors and went to it with his hand tightening on the hilt, half expecting a groan, a curse, some stubborn fool not yet dead. Twice he found a body opened to the bone and stripped of anything worth carrying. Boots gone. Belt knife gone. Signet rings cut from swollen fingers. One man's ears had been sliced for the brass hoops in them. He kept
Okay, right to that did not, to me, make any sense.
He kept searching. He found men from his company by scraps, a torn wolf badge on a gambeson, the split ash shaft of regulation pikes, a shield painted in the old river blue of his king's household. None of it led to the living. The enemy had worked the field after the battle with the same order they had shown during it. Their dead were mostly gone. Their wounded had been taken or finished. What remained on the field was what no commander spent wagons on: broken men, broken gear, and the poor. Crows hopped aside as he approached and settled again the moment he passed. Near a collapsed supply cart he found 3 bodies laid close together, not from mercy but because someone had rolled them to search the backs of their belts. One still wore half a tabard bearing the king's stag, dark with mud. Cale crouched despite the pain and checked the face. Not the king. Not any officer he knew. Relief came first, quick and shameful. Then came the harder truth. If the king had fallen here, he had been taken from the field by friend or foe. If he had lived, he was nowhere within sight of his own dead. Cale straightened slowly and looked south across the trampled plain to the wreck of the enemy camp. No smoke from cook fires. No sentries on the rise. Only torn canvas snapping in the wind and wheel ruts already stiffening at the edges. They had broken his army, stripped the field, and marched. He stood alone among what they had judged not worth keeping, and for the first time since waking in the ravine he understood how complete the defeat was. He stood with the wind worrying at his torn cloak and tried to think like an officer instead of a wounded man. The enemy camp lay open ahead, its center ripped apart, command tents cut down or burned. He had reached it before the line collapsed. That much he knew. He remembered killing 2 guards at the outer line, remembered ducking under a slashed banner, remembered the strange stillness inside the king's enclosure, as if the noise of the field had stopped at the ropes. After that, memory turned treacherous. He saw a cradle in the mud. No cradle. A low campaign chest, perhaps, lined with furs. A child in it. An infant, dark-eyed and wakeful, looking straight at him while men died 100 paces off. Cale shut his eyes hard enough to bring sparks. When he opened them, the field remained what it was, dead men, broken wagons, crows. Yet the image held. The child had not cried. That was what came back hard enough to turn his stomach. No squalling, no startled flinch at the clash outside, only that fixed regard, steady and unreadable. He had thought at the time that shock or blood loss had made nonsense of what he saw. Now, standing in the ruin of an army, he was less certain. Kings did not keep babes in the heart of a war camp. Men did not fight that hard for canvas and a child. Unless it had been a trick. Unless someone had wanted him to see it. He pressed thumb and forefinger against his brow, as if pain could force order into the fragments. Sorcery was the easiest answer and the one he trusted least. He had seen hedge charms, battle priests, old women who could sour milk with a look. But this war had already outrun the old measures. An infant in the enemy king's place. A battle lost too completely. His own life clinging to him past reason. Mockery, perhaps. Some noble's bastard hidden in the command tent while soldiers died to keep him hidden. Or else his mind had broken for a few breaths under steel and terror, and he had filled an empty room with madness. Cale lowered his hand and looked again toward the torn camp. If the child had been real, it mattered. If it had not, the fact that he could no longer trust his own memory mattered more. Either way, the thought sat in his gut like bad meat. He did not move toward the camp. He stood among the dead, measuring the distance, and for the first time in years could not tell whether the greater danger lay in the camp ahead or in his own skull. He turned north without deciding to. His body chose it the way a wounded hound finds its own yard, by a habit older than thought. Beyond the low ridges lay the long road back through the river country, through market towns already shuttering their gates, through farms where men counted sons who had not returned. Farther still lay the blackened stones of his village and the patch of earth where he had left his wife in a hurried grave. Home, if the word still meant anything, lay in that direction. Cale took 3 steps before sense caught up with instinct. The first nearly buckled his right leg. The second left him breathless. On the third he stopped and stood with his head bowed, one hand braced on the pommel of his sword. North. To what? A dead king. A broken army. A village already burned once and likely stripped again by whatever scavengers followed war. If any of his countrymen still held a line, they would have no use for a half-healed captain who brought no men, no orders, and no proof the crown had survived. If the line had failed everywhere, the road north would be full of refugees, deserters, and enemy outriders. He knew too well what became of lone soldiers on conquered roads. He lifted his head and looked that way anyway. The sky was the color of old tin. Crows worked the field behind him. Ahead, the land rolled away in dun grass and frost, so empty it mocked memory. He tried to picture his wife in the doorway as she had been before the war, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, one brow raised when she saw him. The image would not hold. Ash came instead, a roof beam fallen inward, her hand cold in his, the ring gone from his neck. Cale let out a breath that hurt and tasted blood. Going north would not be a return. It would be surrender to ruins already counted. He stood a while longer, staring over the wasted country, until the truth settled into him with the same dull certainty as pain. Nothing behind him could be saved now, and nothing waited there except graves, ashes, and his failure. Hunger made the choice for him. By noon his hands had begun to shake, not from fear but from emptiness, and the pain in his side had settled into something steady enough to work around. Cale moved back among the bodies with his jaw locked and his eyes narrowed against the wind. He did not search faces unless he had to. Belts first. Pouches. Water skins if they were not split. A serviceable cloak from a smaller man. He cut a strip of leather from a dead cavalryman's harness and looped it through the broken buckle on his pack. From another he took a heel of hard cheese wrapped in waxed cloth, green at one edge. He cut the rot away with his dagger and ate the rest standing over the corpse. It tasted of salt and mold. He swallowed every bite. At the third body, he recognized the man. Hadrick from the left pike block, broad nose, one front tooth missing, always first to laugh when the stew was bad. Hadrick's throat had been opened to the spine. Cale crouched anyway and slipped 2 fingers inside the dead man's collar, feeling for the cord soldiers used to hide coin or tokens on. He found a small bronze saint, a bent copper, and a child's carved wooden horse worn smooth by a thumb. His hand closed on the horse and stopped. For a long moment he stayed there, balanced on his heels in the mud, the little toy resting in his palm. Once he would have left such things untouched. Once there had been rules that held even after battle, what belonged to the dead, what a man could take, what hunger did not excuse. Those rules had marched under the king's banner and died here with the rest. Cale put the copper back. The saint as well. The horse he set on Hadrick's chest, where a scavenger might miss it. Then he took the man's waterskin and spare socks and moved on. By the time he stopped, his pack hung heavier and his stomach no longer clawed at his spine. The cost of that small relief sat heavier than the food. He had not become cruel. That would have been easier to bear. He had become practical, and the field rewarded that more reliably than honor, pity, or shame.
Okay, so that takes care of that page.
He found Bren half under a dead horse near the shattered wheel of a baggage cart. The horse had gone over on its side with the shafts still tangled in the harness, and Bren's legs were pinned beneath the weight. Crows had not reached his face yet. Cale knew him by the narrow scar at the chin, the flattened bridge of the nose from a tavern fight years ago, the beard gone more gray than brown since the spring campaign. Bren had held the right flank at Darset Ford when boys twice his size broke and ran. He had once given Cale the last of his dried apples on a winter march and lied that he hated the taste. Cale stood over him a moment, breathing through the ache in his ribs. There were too many dead. If he started this work in earnest, he would still be here when wolves came. But leaving Bren with his boots in the air and his mouth full of frost felt like surrender. Cale set down his pack, braced both hands under the horse's harness, and heaved. Pain flashed white through his side. The carcass shifted an inch, no more, but it gave him room to drag Bren free by the shoulders. Mud smeared the dead man's cloak. One arm bent wrong at the elbow. The ground was too hard for a grave. Cale did what he could. He pulled a torn canvas sheet from the broken cart, wrapped it around Bren, and weighted the edges with stones and a split shield. He took Bren's badge from his tabard before covering him, not as plunder but because names vanished faster than bodies. Someone should remember who had died here. Someone should be able to say it plain later, when the field was only a story to men who had not seen it. Bren Veller, third spear of the river levy, stubborn as old oak and twice as useful. When it was done, The bundle on the frost-burned grass looked small and poor. No priest. No cairn worth the name. No words fit to mend what had happened on this field. Kale rested his hand once on the shield laid over the body, then rose and picked up his pack. Around him the crows kept to their work, indifferent and patient. Honor, he thought, was not a banner or a king's promise. It was this, to refuse, once in a while, to leave a man for crows because a king had lost. By late day the light had gone thin and hard. The field behind him was turning the color of iron, the bodies flattening into the ground as the shadows lengthened. Kale stood on a low rise where the rutted track split, north toward the river country and all that had been taken from him, south toward hills he did not know. The wind came colder now. It found the wet places in his torn gambeson and the gap beneath his cuirass and worried them open. He could still turn back. A man could choose morning, if he had the strength to walk back into it. He studied the northern track until his eyes watered. He saw no village, no hearth smoke, no banner worth following, only distance. If he went that way, he would spend what remained of him among ruins, answering ghosts that could not be fed, defended, or buried any better than before. He had failed his wife. He had failed his king. The land itself had broken under stronger men than he was. There was no honor in kneeling beside the wreck and waiting for hunger, steel, or winter to finish what the battle had begun. South promised nothing kinder. The road narrowed into broken country, a line of mud and stone running toward dark folds of land where evening had already pooled. He knew the names of none of the towns beyond those hills. That helped. A nameless place would ask nothing of him. No one there would look at his face and remember who he had been before the war, or what he had not saved. The thought was not comfort. It was only something he could use. Kale adjusted the strap of his pack, set one hand on the sword at his hip, and turned from the north. The first step south pulled at his wounds. The second committed him to it. He did not tell himself he was seeking a future. He was only refusing a particular death, not in his burned country, not under the weight of old vows, not where every mile held a grave. As dusk gathered over the plain, he went on until the crossroads was behind him and the north no longer lay in sight. He made camp in the lee of a broken stone marker where the road bent between low banks choked with thorn. There was little wood to be had. He fed the fire with dead brush and a splintered fence rail, and it answered with a mean, uncertain flame that gave more smoke than heat. Kale sat close anyway, cloak drawn tight over his armor, boots to the coals, sword within reach of his hand. The night had a raw edge to it. Frost silvered the grass beyond the firelight. Every few breaths, pain in his side reminded him what the day had cost. Sleep came in scraps. He would drift, chin sinking to his chest, and wake at once with his hand on the sword hilt and the taste of iron in his mouth. Once he thought he heard crows and found only the hiss of damp wood. Once he saw, with the sharp conviction of a dream, a hand moving over him in the dark, long fingers, nails black-rimmed, a thumb pressing below his ribs as if testing a cut of meat. He jerked awake hard enough to send sparks spinning into the dark. No one stood beyond the fire. The road lay empty. The thorn banks held their silence. When he slept again, a woman's voice came as clear as remembered pain. Not loud. Close. Amused. You are mine. The words followed him out of the dream unchanged. Kale opened his eyes to the coals and did not move. His heart was beating too fast, but fear was not the worst of it. There had been a woman after the battle of that he was almost sure. Ragged layers. A smell of ash and old blood. He had taken her for some camp scavenger bending over the wounded. Had she spoken to him? Had he answered? He could not tell whether memory was returning or madness finding a better voice. He stayed awake after that, feeding the fire one twig at a time, as if the small labor could keep the dark from taking shape around him. Mine, the voice had said. A fever dream, perhaps. A thief's taunt. A dying man's nonsense. Yet before dawn the word still sat in him like a hook, and for the first time since leaving the field, Cale feared less what might be waiting on the road than what had already touched him.
Right there. Okay, so that's only about the millionth time it's done the whole it likes to taste iron thing, so I'm going to try something over here. Alright, we'll see if that works. Maybe it'll stop talking about tasting iron and still. Okay, next page.
At first light the fire was a bed of white ash with a single coal buried in it. Cale woke stiff and cold, his hand already on the sword beside him. The road lay empty under a pale sky. Frost had gathered along the broken stone marker and the thorn branches, clean and indifferent. For a moment he listened for the voice from the night, for a footstep beyond the bank, for any sign that someone had been there at all. There was nothing. Only wind moving through the thorns and the far cry of carrion birds over the battlefield he had left behind. He rose carefully, favoring his right side. The straps of his cuirass had loosened in the night where dried blood had stiffened the leather. He set his jaw and worked them tight again, one by one, until the armor sat where it should. The effort made his breath shorten. He ignored it. He bound a strip of cloth tighter around his middle, pulled the scavenged cloak over mail and plate, and checked each buckle as if he were dressing for inspection instead of another day of flight. Discipline was a habit the war had not beaten out of him. It gave shape to pain and made a man look less breakable than he was. When he was done, he might still have passed for a captain at a distance, tall, broad-shouldered, gear in order, sword clean at the hip. Up close, the life rayed. Mud darkened the hem of his cloak. One gauntlet was from another man's kit. In the polished curve of his helm, his face looked older than he remembered, weathered and hollow-eyed. Haunted, his wife would have said, then mocked him for the word until he smiled. He looked away before memory could settle. South, he thought. Not to safety, he no longer believed in that. But far enough that his name would mean nothing, far enough that no one would ask where his king had fallen or why his village had burned while he lived. Far enough that failure would be only another scar, unread by strangers. Cale ground the last coal under his boot, shouldered his pack, and stood a moment with the dawn on his face. Then he turned to the road and began to walk. Then he turned to the road and began to walk.
Every once in a while it'll say the same thing twice. It's interesting. I don't know why it does that. Okay, next page. I think this is the last one of this chapter.
The road climbed by degrees, leaving the battlefield stink behind and giving him cleaner miseries, cold wind, bad footing, the pull of half-healed flesh under armor. Cale kept to the edge where wagon ruts gave way to scrub and stone. It was habit now to make himself smaller than his size allowed, to let distance and a hood do what rank and steel no longer could. Behind him lay a king's defeat, a village's ashes, and a wife's grave he had not seen. Ahead, hills darkened under cloud, and in this country, fresh with rumors of war, strangers were judged before they spoke.
Okay, so I already saw something. It was okay. Yeah, it wasn't now habit. It was. It needed to become habit.
By noon the land had changed. The open plain was gone, broken into ridges and narrow cuts where meltwater had chewed the earth raw. Pines began to appear in scattered ranks, black against the pale sky. Kale walked through it with the same measured stride he had used on campaign, saving breath, counting ground, noting where a man might hide, where archers would choose to stand, where a wounded soldier would be left to die in a ditch. The thinking came too easily. He had once believed war ended when the banners fell. Now he knew it stayed in the body, in the measured breath, the watchful eye, the habit of weighing every rise and ditch for death. Toward evening he stopped on a rise and looked south. The road bent between the first shoulders of the mountains and vanished there. No smoke marked a village. No bell carried on the wind. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like being erased. Kale stood with one hand near his sword and admitted he preferred erasure to being known. A man with no country, no ring, and no grave to return to could still choose one thing: keep moving before memory caught him. So he went on as the light thinned and the cold sharpened. His boots struck stone, then mud, then stone again. Once, when pain flared under his right ribs, he pressed a gauntleted hand there and felt bandage, mail, and the hard line of bone beneath them. Nothing answered from within. Nothing warned him that something in him had already been altered. Far behind, where crows still worked at the dead, the witch's promise kept pace with him all the same.
Okay, that gives a little bit of a hint as this chapter ends that he was touched in some way by the witch. That will go on. Even though earlier I said I took out something similar to that, it was don't need multiple of those in this chapter, and this is the closing sentence in the chapter, and it's not quite as specific as the other one was. Okay, so that's chapter 3, and I think that's the end, right? Yep, that's the end. So there's another chapter done. I'm going to take a break again. And I'll be back later to move on to the next chapter 4. And let's take a quick look here. I think there's 15 chapters, if I remember right. Wanders in the Shadow. Interesting. Okay. And yeah, 15 chapters. All right. Let's keep at it until we get it all done. And then we'll render all of the media for it and start doing the playback. There's a playback view for playing the story back as a I don't know, as a media enhanced story. You know, TTS, images, animations, potentially videos if I end up doing that. Background music. So it could be more of like a media experience where you can record the output and turn it into videos like on YouTube. Anyway, that's it for me for now. I'm going to shut down the stream.